I'm joined in studio by our second bookworm, Zama Phakathi. She'll chat to me about her book, Capitalist, let's see, how do we creatively say that word? Capitalist Ninja, for the sake of this interview, by Chika Onyeani. A lot of people know it, so we shan't say that word now. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Sunday. What attracted you to this read?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me in the studio. I think this book, Capitalist Nigger, resonates well with me because I'm very much a go-getter myself, and it talks a lot about us black people having expectations from government to do things for us. We expect the state to make our lives easier in every shape, form or size, which is not practical. Remember, the state controls about a third of the GDP that the country makes. The balance of the economy still resides within the private sector. So we need to be realistic about how much capacity the state has to look after 50 million people, 50 million citizens of the country. So the author of the book, Dr. Chika Onyeani, speaks very, very aggressively on that issue of saying, let's go out there and make things happen. Let's not sit back and wait for things to come to us. Nothing in life is going to come to you. You have to go out there and fight for it, obviously within the legal parameters. But we need to understand the principle that things need to be fought for.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got that argument, but you also got the school of thought that says, well, let's take a look at some of the most impoverished areas that we have in the country, in the deepest of rural areas. While we understand that the government can't take care of all of us, exposure is everything also. So there's some people, I beg your pardon, who don't even have as much as a TV or something that can expose them to a different life or wanting something different, which perpetuates the cycle of poverty.
Sure. No, 100%. I agree with you fully, and that is why this approach that the author is actually talking about in the book cannot be phased in throughout the entire or across all levels of society. It comes in different levels. But some of us, I can't expect the government to give me a house when I'm totally capable of going out there to work for myself and get myself a house. So some of us need to understand that principle, that we can't all rely on government. Some of us have got to go out there and make an impact and think of different ways in which, you know, we can tap into the mainstream economy and come back and then make a difference in our communities. It's not going to happen overnight, and you know, one individual can't change everything at the same time, but I think collectively we can make a difference, understanding that, you know, these things obviously come at different levels at different times.
And let's look at that issue of the collective. Was this a bit challenging for you to read, especially when he talks about the concept of you know, having the example of having a bucket full of crabs, and when one person tries to come out, then everybody else is like, no, where are you going? Come back, stay with us. Was that challenging for you as a black person to read?
I think that's one of the most interesting and the most intriguing angles of this book that fascinated me. The fact that he speaks very viciously around that issue of us Africans failing to work as a collective. He talks strongly about the spider web doctrine, the approach that the Caucasian groupings utilize. If you look at our lighter skinned friends and their business approach, they work, even though they're in minority in the country, but they work as a team. They work together. They pass business from one individual to another of the same race group to ensure that every rand circulates amongst themselves. And that's how they grow their businesses and their empires and grow their generational wealth. And us as black people, we think differently. If somebody else is doing well, black people tend to get jealous and they want to hinder them from progressing forward, which is sad. And we are not going to be able to create generational wealth with that mentality. So we need to understand that for us to actually penetrate the mainstream economy, we need to, you can't work in isolation. The JSE listed companies are not necessarily owned by one individual. They are owned by a group of forward thinkers, of visionary entrepreneurs that understand the principle of working as a collective and that spider web approach, which is key in business and in changing the economical landscape of the country.
Right. You're an entrepreneur, perhaps maybe in the work that you do. How do we begin to change all of that you've spoken about?
Sure. I think You know, everything starts somewhere. Fortunately for me, I do sit in some organized business associations, serving in boards and councils. So from where I'm sitting, I can do the bit that I can do in terms of putting systems in place, voicing my opinion, mentoring other business people, and preaching the word, which I do. I do a lot of business talks, talking to youth, talking to women, encouraging them to understand the principle of going out there and making things happen, and of understanding the principle of working with other people as a team, not competing, but rather let's complement each other, because we all have different strengths. And all these strengths used together effectively can actually change the world.
Right.
Yeah, so from where I'm sitting, I can do the bit that I can do. But, you know, the other person as well, another friend, another associate doing the bit that they can, ultimately there is a difference that can be made. I understand, obviously, that it can't be achieved overnight, but if we all start speaking the same language and understanding that we need to work together like our light-skinned friends do, the Caucasian groups, that's the only way we're going to master this economy and move towards private sector, because we can't all be sitting here and expecting the 30% that is allocated to private sector to feed all 50 million of us. It's just not practical.
Your biggest takeout for this book, when somebody is listening to this and is like, shouldn't I read this? Perhaps just a word in terms of why should you pick this copy up?
You know, like everyone else, I've read a lot of different books, and as you know, this is a very old book. It's not like a newly released book, but this one particularly resonates very well with me as an entrepreneur, because, and the reason why I feel everybody should get a copy and read it is because it makes you look at life differently, and it states all the hard facts and the realities of life that we are all beating around the bush when it comes to facing them and tackling them heads on. You know, it basically unpacks the things that are reality that are hindering our growth as black people that we are all afraid to talk about. You know, it's vicious facts that are stipulated there that every entrepreneur needs to understand, because at the end of the day, if we are going to move forward, we need to understand what our faults are and diagnose ourselves properly, and then move forward from there in order to really become economic warriors in this country.
Thank you so much, Phakathi. Lovely chatting to you on this Sunday morning.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Of your book. That was Chika Onyeani's book called Capitalist Ninja by Phakathi, reviewing that book. Thank you very much.